Jon, please
So
go ahead.
I'll go ahead. I have just a comment on your second paper. Actually, we talked about it in the coffee break. I sympathize completely with you. Being on the editorial board of some of these high-level journals, I simply found that often eminent colleagues are not willing to get outside the anonymous peer review realm, actually. We feel extremely uncomfortable about it. So we are only willing to shoot down a paper if nobody learns about that. This is, in a way, very bad scientific culture, I guess. We have to overcome it, so I fully sympathize. I have a very specific and concrete question. You talked about this birch pollen thing. I found that extremely convincing. It's still a big mystery in a way. But my question is, obviously, if there is a combination reaction, even interaction with pollutants, the allergic potential becomes enhanced. Now I wonder whether you have a quantitative analysis. Is it enhanced by 5%, 10%? Are there any measurements really? Because in the end I can understand there is an enhancement, or there can be, but how solid is the scientific evidence?
Mm-hmm. So please hold on. We want to pack this into a number of comments. I think I saw, Aldelami, one, Kamen, Estol, 1, 2, 3, go ahead.
So just a question, air pollution research and respiratory illnesses have been going on for decades. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of papers. Why is it, in your opinion, that the link with climate change never happened to the degree that we could have, helped move this discussion earlier on? Is it because the link is not that clear, or something else that you might want to clarify or help us understand?
Okay, next please. Come on. Dude.
So I too wanted to comment in on this, this open access process. Not to take away from the interesting science in the first part, but I'm the editor of a journal called Environmental Research Letters that's been open access for now 11 years. And we've had this fascinating experience where it's not only open access, and so that means that authors from industrialized nations, the definition has changed, pay a fee. All other authors from developing countries pay no fee, and the papers are available openly. We not only found that we got quicker, more lengthy reviews because people wanted to see the review comments as well as the papers, but interestingly, people started to comment in on papers in new ways. And so one of the big innovations was authors from countries where English is not the first language requested that the authors produce video abstracts if they want. It was voluntary, and they can do it in whatever languages they want. And we thought, oh, this will be a big problem. Authors found they did it, and the interesting feature, to sort of back up your point, was that readership went way up. Authors had to really be thoughtful about what's the public message when you do a video abstract, not just a nerdy academic one. And we demonstrated factors of 2 and 3 more downloads because this feedback from the public, they wanted to access the science. And that was something that none of us expected. It came out as an emergent feature of this.
Okay. Conrado, Estol?
Beyond the allergy, the immunological changes you mentioned are extremely important maybe because recent research has shown an immunological basis for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, for atherosclerosis, for cancer. And in fact, they are all treated with monoclonal antibodies. Do you bridge that gap? Do you understand it that way too, immunological basis of air pollution and those diseases?
There was one more. Yep.
We now accept in cardiovascular disease that it's an inflammatory disease. We no longer think of it as a cholesterol-driven process. And when we think about inflammation, we're reaching into the armamentarium of rheumatologic drugs, for example. And of course, we say we believe the benefit of statin therapy is its anti-inflammatory effects. And I think the big disconnect we have is the silos. Because I, for one, as a cardiologist, 7 years of training after medical school, air pollution wasn't even on the list of risk factors for cardiovascular disease. And so we have this silo of the way health practitioners are trained, which is very different from the dialogue that we're having here as it relates to pollution and heavy metals and agriculture and so on, and how we prepare our food, and the list is endless. So I really would like to just call to the attention of this group that we need a new model that teaches health providers differently. And without that model, we'll never have the support of the medical community to push this whole agenda forward.
Mm-hmm. Professor Pressure, this is lots of comments, but you will manage.
I'll try. Well, evidence for the protein nitration effects, we did have experiments with our partners, so that's not what we are doing in-house, that's what more competent partners are doing. And so the first effects, we did have positive results with patient sera also, so that you have a stronger response. And what my colleagues told me, I'm not able to assess that these were relatively strong effects. So it has been back some while, so it is 20–30%. Sometimes it's also a factor of 2, but when you have these cell culture experiments or even then animal models or so, right, the statistics are kind of poor, and we try to stay out of animal models, so it's a bit difficult to prove these things really very hard, but in principle all that we have so far is quite encouraging, and there are significant signals, but this is definitely an area of research that we are still pursuing. Well, the link between air pollution and climate change, I think it always has been there, but of course there have to be clear focal points, right? So, and indeed I think for now we should just cut down also on the CO2 emissions, and CO2 is not a classical air pollutant in that sense, right? And so I think this connection is now being recycled and made better use of, but in how this has been taught, both I would say on the atmospheric science side with air pollution and on the climate side, so between these two fields I think there always has been a close connection. But then to the broader community or so, this did not become apparent, obviously.
I meant to the health impact. I'm sorry if I missed that.
Right, and that, I think that just evolved now that these things are, through meetings like this and others, that things are getting better in exchange. Yeah, well, I think to Dan Kemen's comment, I think that's indeed, we should make better use of all these new opportunities. So I think that's very promising. And then for the chronic inflammation, so I think we haven't yet looked specifically into what you ask, how it relates, how the air pollution or this allergenic protein modification might relate to other diseases. But this chronic inflammation, that inflammation and chronic forms of inflammation are involved in many diseases, I think that is in principle well known, and just again, the connection to other sources of inflammation other than what the body should do when it reacts to an intruder, that has not been made so clearly and so quantitatively, and it's always a bit laborious to get these collaborations going because it takes weeks and months or sometimes years until you write the first papers together with a biomedical and a physicochemical partner to even understand each other's language and way of arguing and so on. So it's always, I think it's understandable that these collaborative projects don't come about by themselves because it's a big effort from both sides to just get into the other's position and look at things from a different angle. In practice, that's not so easy and quite time-consuming.
Okay. Professor Pressure, you will be so kind and give our greetings to Paul Crutzen. The agenda before us wouldn't be like this if he wouldn't have done what he did. As an academic and as an influential member of this academy. So give him our warm regards. I close by asking you all for a round of applause to our three speakers, Howard Frumkin, Peter Raven, Ulrich Po. I pass for a moment to Ram, who wants to explain to you, declare the declaration. Yeah?
Thank you, President. The copy of the declaration has been circulated to you, and I just want to take a couple of minutes to explain the procedure. Thursday, the November 4th, that's our third day. In the penultimate session, Chancellor Marcello, Partha Dasgupta, myself, and Jeff Sachs would summarize this and have the final declaration. It'll be posted on the Academy website, and whoever wants to sign are invited to sign on that declaration. Of course, all of our Academy members will be signing on that. I just want to explain that we gave it to you to get feedback from you. But I'm sorry for being a dictatorial statement here. We don't want wordsmithing. We have already done that for 2 weeks. We battled back and forth. And personally, none of us, the committee which is editing this, myself, Partha Dasgupta, Marcello, and Peter, we don't have the bandwidth to start wordsmithing. And it's been already done. What I would like will be fantastic to get your comments is, are we missing something big here? Okay? So I have 4 topics. I think communication came up. And I don't think we touched on that here. So I'm going to request my good friend, or my distinguished colleague, who is a Dean of Education, Marcelo Orozco, to collect your comments if you have something specific. And again, please don't write a paragraph. We don't have space. It's already much longer than what we want. 1 or 2 sentences. Particularly, I turned your attention to the last page. Jeff Sachs put just a fantastic set of solutions, okay? And I think if you can add a sentence or 2 there on communication, education as part of that. So, Marcelo, are you willing to do that? Yes. So please send your comments to him. On the air pollution health issue, if we are missing something major, only major, kindly pass on your comments to Andy Haynes. I have not talked to you about this. And he's a leader of the Lancet Commission. So something, if we missed or Lancet missed, please pass it on to Andy. And then, Andy, you can send it to me after you synthesize. On the climate change, I have requested John Schellenhuber to look at it and give us some feedback on that if you're missing something major. Is that okay with you, John? And if you have anything on the climate change, please email John. And the next is, we have some, very influential physicians in this audience, all the way from South America, North America, and Europe. So if there is something in the sentence you would like to see added here, which will make it easier for you to go back to your constituency, please send it to Bess Marcus. She's chairing one of the sessions on that day. And again, Bess, we just need 1 or 2 sentences. We don't have to explain anything. We are authorities in our topic, we just pronounce it, okay? And the faith leaders here, and if you have any comments you would like to see added, please give that to our Chancellor Marcello. Marcello, is that okay?
I completely agree. The unique thing that we can add is that we make a translation in Spanish to give to the Pope, synthetic.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then we have, several distinguished political leaders here, governor of jurisdictions and Senate and ministers. So if you have some point there which we want to include here, please send your comments to Maria. Maria, you're chairing that session, communicating that. So I think the way we are going to decide what to put in is that this editorial committee we have, Chancellor Marcello, Peter Raven, myself, and Partha will prepare the final version. For this to be included in this, we need your comments or email by about 3 o'clock tomorrow. So that'll give us some time and to redo this. And the last thing I want to mention, I'm done, a one-page summary of all this has been translated in Spanish, and Marcelo is going to communicate that to Pope Francis.
Thank you. Well done. Pater, you had a question?
Some of us are getting old and I'm slow, but a thought has struck me and I wanted to try it out on you to see what your reaction is. It'll be very, very brief. In all this discussion we've had today, one group we haven't mentioned who really ought to be engaged in this, and it's our duty to do so, and it's the young. And I was wondering whether the young, through the education system, not just at home, but we do not have curricula, at least in the countries I know of. I mean young, I mean right from word go. I don't mean when they're teenagers, but well before. In the education curricula, Mother Nature doesn't really figure in any systematic way. And the world around us is something which is fascinating, and yet sometimes it's taught in geography. Of course it's taught in geography, but that comes much later. And I was wondering whether in our statement, it might, the final page, there is a way of including in one of the bullet point, an additional bullet point on education. I mean, I was responding to your open access point, but that is addressing experts. I'm now talking really about getting the next generation on board, and they'll be the ones who'll be doing it, and they'll be the ones who'll be suffering. Okay.
Thank you for this suggestion, and I would recommend that we channel these comments also to you, Marcelo Suarez. We had a fabulous workshop with about 20 teenagers here in the academy 1.5 years ago on sustainability and education and other youth engagements, and so I think it's a point well taken. We should not just mention them, but then soon find ways to reconnect to that community and expand it. Marcelo, I hand over to you. You are chairing the next session.